Thorne, our fifth grade band director. He works all across the district and has done a phenomenal job of just building up the program, creating excitement, and letting students learn and believe in themselves and create music. And Mr. Cawthorn, you want to introduce everybody?
Sure.
All right, thank you for having us.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having us tonight. We have a few of our fifth grade band students here. So students, come on up, say your first name and something you like about school.
My name is Elijah, and one thing I like about school is playing band.
My name is Prince, and I like science.
My name is Juliana, and I like ELA.
My name is Brooklyn, and I like math.
All right, it's time for the Pledge of Allegiance. Come up here now. Come up here. Come closer. Okay, ready? Ready? 1, 2. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate that, and we love everything, hearing from the students and what you like about school. Next on the agenda is the board president report. Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight and for your continued interest in and support of the School District of Beloit. Welcome back to students and staff. We hope everyone had a restful and enjoyable spring break. Mrs. Schopp, do you have that other attachment also? Can we project that? Thank you. On March 23rd, the board held a workshop to discuss the superintendent transition and timeline, as well as to plan ahead in light of declining enrollment and ongoing budget constraints for the 26-27 and the 2027-28 school years. The discussion also included the possibility of a November referendum and options for future board calendars. This evening, we will take steps toward decisions related to the hiring process for the district's next superintendent. On March 30th, the board held a second workshop focused on the district's budget outlook for the next 2 school years, what was referred to as a tale of 2 budgets. We are in a challenging position. With declining enrollment and limited financial resources, the district must make difficult and significant decisions. In recent years, without a successful referendum to offset financial shortfalls, multiple reductions have already been made. As we continue to right-size the district, the remaining reductions will be substantial, as there are few areas left to cut without impacting core services. For the 2026 school year, the district is facing an estimated $4.5 million reduction, with a projected shortfall of approximately $14 to $15 million or more the following year. As enrollment declines, funding decreases accordingly, since dollars follow students. However, as enrollment decreases, the district's cost per student increases. This is due in part to the fact that some higher cost students' needs remain within the district, while other districts may have the ability to limit enrollment in certain areas. For example, if a student is a special ed or has an IEP and needs special services from the School District of Beloit and they want to open enrolling to another district, the other district does not necessarily have to take those students. And oftentimes, students with IEPs, BIP plans, 504 plans need extra services costing more money. This dynamic can be difficult to understand because usually people tend to think the money follows the student. Not every student costs the same amount of money to educate. A helpful comparison might be to think about a healthcare system. If you think about a hospital, every patient in that hospital does not cost the same to help get better. Some patients might require minimal care, maybe a stitch or two, while others might be fighting cancer and costing hundreds of thousands of dollars. Similarly, school districts must be prepared to serve all students, including those with the greatest needs. Every student deserves access to high-quality education, and we remain committed to that responsibility. Despite these challenges, we are making progress and continuing to build momentum for our students and our community. Okay. I know a lot of you are here tonight to talk about the budget, and no decisions are going to be made tonight. Tonight's discussion is a discussion. We are looking at the preliminary budget for the 26-27 school year, and we are continuing to discuss our different options. I've asked Mrs. Shope and Mrs. Elwood to project something. Usually I don't do this. I wanted to share with you my tax history for my property, my house here in Beloit, over the last 13 years, being a little bit anal. I keep my tax documents that long, even though we don't need to go back that long. However, if you're interested and want to know what your tax impact has been, you can get the past 10 years off of the Rock County website. I wanted to bring this to your attention because you'll notice that last year we did see a significant increase. Yes, all of us too up here had that same 520 plus percentage increase, where I went from $164 in the 2024 year to last year over $1,000. That is a shock to the system. There are a lot of things that impact this. Unfortunately, I haven't had any improvements done on my house since before this decade. But you'll notice 22, 23, 24, all of those years, my tax burden from the school district of Beloit was less than $1,000. Compare that to the previous years before that. There is no year before that where it was less than $1,000. I know it's a hard pill to swallow when you get a tax increase of $500 or more dollars. However, I'm still paying less, and this is not adjusted for inflation. These are the raw dollars. I'm still paying less this year than I did in 2016, 10 years ago. We, as a community, have to decide how important is public education to us. That's going to be part of the discussion tonight. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Mrs. Elwood. Next up, we have upcoming events and announcements. Board Clerk Hankins.
Thank you, Board President. Good evening. These are the announcements for Tuesday, April 7th, Election Day 2026. Today is Election Day. If you haven't voted yet, there is still time. Polls are open until 8 p.m., and as long as you're in line, then you can still vote. We hope all of our students and staff enjoyed a spring break and welcome back. Sunday, April 19th, the Jazz Orchestra is having a fundraising concert in the high school auditorium at 3 p.m. for their trip to essentially Ellington in New York. Help support your high school students by attending on Sunday, April 19th. Saturday, April 25th, Gaston will be having an elementary school carnival from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. There will be games, prizes, and more. If you are able to volunteer, please contact the PTO team at 608-361-2300. That's 361-2300. Beloit Memorial High School will proudly celebrate its 2026 Hall of Fame recipient on Friday, May 8th at 1 p.m. This year's honoree is Tracy Piazza Saladar, a distinguished graduate from the class of 1992. Congratulations, Tracy. Will your child be 4 years or old on or before September 1, 2026? If the answer is yes, then your child is eligible to enroll in the School District of Beloit 4K program. Come on in to the Colac Education Center to enroll your student or enroll your student online at beloitschools.net. Don't delay, enroll today. Upcoming meetings at the Colac Center include Monday, April 20th, Policy and HR meeting at 4. Tuesday, April 21, TLE and Pupil Services at 5 p.m., followed by the regular board business meeting at 6. Tuesday, April 28th, the board organizational meeting is at 5 p.m. I have one personal note to add. A longtime Beloit District teacher, educator, Jan Knutson, passed away this last Saturday, a dear friend. Sorry. And this concludes the announcements for tonight.
Thank you, Tom. We're sorry for your loss. Our next agenda item is recognitions. Tonight, we have Mr. Chris Whitney, the principal from Hackett Elementary, and Ms. Kowalik, the first grade teacher from Hackett Elementary.
Okay, we have more people than that because we have some of Ms. Kowalek's first grade students too. So I'm going to be really short because I want to make sure that they get to, the people that get impacted by our volunteer get to talk the most. But we definitely appreciate all of our volunteers at Hackett. We wanted to pay a special recognition to Ann Muadimas, who has been volunteering for, I guess, quite a few years with Ms. Kowalek. It's my first year at Hackett, but I know she's been there, steady, and she's always there. She always shows up for the kids and works with them, and we really appreciate her commitment to the first graders at Hackett. So thank you very much. And I'm going to let Ms. Kowalek and her first graders tell you all about Ms. Muadimas.
Want to come up here? Right next to me. Give me confidence, because I'm used to talking to little ones. All right. Good evening. My name is Jonalee Kowalek, and I have been a Wisconsin educator for over 30 years. I'd like to first thank our school board, administration, teachers, staff, and community members for all that you have done to contribute towards creating successful learning opportunities for our students. Through the years, I've witnessed many changes in our educational systems, some favorable and some not so welcoming. One thing I do know is that we are all in this together for one main purpose, helping to guide our children to become successful lifelong learners and to instill the joy and importance of being a respectful, well-rounded person. It's an honor for me to introduce Ann Muadimas, yes, otherwise known as Mrs. B. That's all I've ever called her, so I was like, Ann is a member of the Retired Senior Volunteer Program in Beloit. She has worked and lived in the Beloit area for the majority of her life. For the past 3 years, Ann has been volunteering in my classroom once a week, tutoring students of all abilities to increase their individual reading goals. She has built an environment that fosters safety, trust, and most importantly, confidence building for our most vulnerable learners. Ann, you've become my friend, You have also become my confidant. You are a person who truly wants to seek solutions for implementing quality education in our schools. I do. Words cannot express my gratitude for your commitment to the children of the Beloit School District. Tonight, I brought with me 3 students with their families to share a brief memory about you.
Oh, boy.
And we'll start with Ryan. You got this, girl. Excitement.
Hi, my name is Ryan. I am a first grader in Miss Kwok's class at Hackett Elementary School. This year I met a nice lady named Miss B. She is a volunteer. A volunteer is someone who helps people and earns 0 money. This year I started off the school year on 1 yellow, but from a lot of help from Miss B and Miss Kwok, I am now on 1G and close to 2G. And that's a year's growth, and first grade isn't even over yet.
Hello, my name is Carl Newsom, and I'm a first grader in Miss Quaddick's class. I go to Hackett Elementary School in 3/4 of school. I made 3.64 years of growth so far in reading. That's double than what is expected. It started out reading with my mom, then I got to read with my teacher, Miss Quaddick. This year, I also read with Mrs. B on Wednesdays. They both helped me learn and reach my goals. Mrs. B helped me learn my tricky words. I enjoy reading about sea animals. My favorite sea animal is the whale shark.
You need to know he had 0 voice at school this morning. We've been pumping up vitamins and water. So you did great. All right, you got this.
Hello, my name is Amir Richardson, and I am a first grader in Miss Kowalick's class. I go to Hackett. At the beginning of this year, I was reading letters and sounds. Now I can read over 60 words. I made 1.42 years of growth. So this every day, I get to read with my teacher. This year, I also read with Miss B. She is helping me learn my tricky words. I enjoy reading about red apples. I learn how to grow them.
Nice job, Amir. So we just wanted to present you this.
Oh,
I hope you have a green thumb.
I do. I have too many plants, and my windowsills are full, but I can make room.
All right.
And this
We
is
love
for you
you.
as well.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Give her a hug. All right. Thanks.
Thank you, Brian. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
Can I thank all of you? Can I hug you? I don't have to say anything, do I?
No, you're
Thank you. Oh, I actually have one thing. Oh, I'm sorry. Anyone who wants to complain about what's going on in the school district and has any time at all in their life needs to come in and volunteer. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. B. I can't tell you how much we appreciate your time and energy And I love the description of a volunteer, somebody who works for zero pay. But what you do for our students will reap rewards for generations to come. Thank you so much.
I have to say, though, what I tell them about the tricky word is English doesn't make sense. You just have to memorize.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. B. Next on the agenda, we have public comment. Mrs. Shope, do we have public comment tonight? Okay. Members of the public are welcome to attend all open meetings of the Board of Education. Individuals attending board meetings are expected to conduct themselves in a respectful and courteous manner that models appropriate behavior for our students. Individuals wishing to comment are expected to comply with the norms found on the back of your comment cards and in Board Policy 187, Public Participation at Board Meetings. We ask that each of you contribute to maintaining a respectful and orderly meeting and prevent discussing confidential matters in a public forum by following these norms for public comments during board meetings. Thank you for your participation and courtesy. Mrs. Shope?
The first person I have is Dwayne.
Good evening. Thank you for giving me this time. My name is Dwayne Collins, and I'm a proud graduate of Rockford East High School in class of 1977. In April of 1976, 50 years ago, the District 205 in Rockford proposed some budget cuts to help bridge a budget gap. They were very strong budget cuts. In actuality, they eliminated all extracurricular activities for that particular school year. It started out 2 years prior to that when they eliminated middle school sports, as the Beloit School District is considering right now. So I'm actually here to tell you that history is important because we need to understand it so we're not doomed to repeat mistakes. I went from being a 3.2 grade point average, being on the International Honor Society, to falling to 2.9 because in my senior year, without any sports or any extracurricular activities, I lost all my focus. I got my first D ever in my entire scholastic career, and for that school year, I got all C's and 1 D and dropped my grade point average. And I attribute that to the fact that I was just unfocused. Now, it didn't ruin my life. Because I was a 3-sport athlete and I kind of figured that I had a chance to somehow earn a scholarship. So I ended up going to 2 different junior colleges, kind of chasing the football dream. And then when that didn't come to fruition, I just went ahead and enrolled in HBCU, earned my bachelor's degree in business management. I also earned a master's in public administration from Northern Illinois University. And I had a 30-year career with the city of Rockford in the community and economic development department, as well as working 4 years in Boone County government. So it didn't ruin my life, but kind of slowed me down. But I have a lot of friends and cohorts and classmates who it did ruin their lives. So I'm just here to say, I drove up here from Rockford just to say, I understand that right now the cuts are minimal, but if you can nip this in the bud and don't let it become what it became in Rockford, you owe that to the students, you owe that to your enrolled students, you owe that to your community. My 17-year-old self is pleading with you to do what you can right now so that it doesn't get to that point. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Mrs. Shope?
Next, I have Charlene.
Hello, good evening. My name is Charlene Hutner. I am a school counselor at Fruzen Middle School. Just, you know, we are called school counselors, not guidance counselors. So just keep that in mind when you're talking about cutting for elementary school counselors, which would not be a great thing for our district. So according to the 2023 YRBS, the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, which is a survey that we do take here in Beloit, more than half of the students in Wisconsin reported experiencing anxiety. Over 1/3 of all Wisconsin students surveyed reported feeling sad or hopeless almost every day for more than 2 weeks in a row, which is statistically significant increase of 5.2 percentage points since 2019 and the highest rate since this survey was first administered. Mental health concerns are on the rise for all of our students. Furthermore, the American School Counselor Association recommends one counselor for every 250 students. With our current enrollment numbers, that would mean a counselor at every elementary school and 2 at the middle schools, so that we can stay, to meet that national recommendation. I appreciate the hard decision that you guys have to make. I know we are in a budget crisis. I know that we have to make some cuts. However, our students need support emotionally and academically. Without student services, the support would not exist. It takes every member of our team to provide critical services to our students. Please consider making cuts in other areas as our students' mental health depends on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hutner. Mrs. Schultz?
Next, I have James.
Good evening. My name is James Hoy, and I'm one of the co-presidents of the Beloit Education Association. I'm here tonight to address the agenda item regarding the budgeting process, and specifically the discussion about a salary increase compared to an alternative calendar in place of a salary increase. First, we'd like to thank the board for recognizing that teachers can't continue to do the same work for the same pay while the cost of living is blowing personal budgets out of the water. The BEA understands that the district is in a tough financial situation. However, the BEA strongly encourages the board to move forward with a budget that includes a cost of living increase. While a reduction in the number of workdays does appear to be a raise, it does not help with the increased cost of living that we are all experiencing. Raises that do not keep up with inflation are essentially a pay cut. Teachers already work outside of their contracted hours with no extra compensation, as there's not always enough time to get everything done in a day. A professional workforce needs to be treated as such. Less time focused on teaching and learning is not going to help our students. A cost of living raise is the best way to solve the compensation problem. While the entire country is facing a teacher shortage, Beloit faces a greater shortage than most places for a variety of reasons. One of this board's goals to Dr. Anderson was to find ways to help recruit and retain teachers. We need to do whatever we can to recruit new teachers to Beloit and better yet retain the teachers that we currently have. In our opinion, not offering a raise would be a blow to current staff morale. We also believe this would deter new teachers and staff from coming to Beloit. In conclusion, we understand the financial impact and burden this puts on the budget and the district during these difficult times. However, we strongly feel that a cost of living increase is the best way to show respect for your staff and to treat us as the professionals we are. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hoey. Mrs. Schultz?
The last thing I have is an email to read. We are Brooke and Aniela. We currently teach second grade dual language at Robinson Elementary School. We are concerned with the proposed changes to the dual language program for the upcoming school year. The proposed changes are to have 5K through 4 classes with a single teacher teaching both languages with a cap of 22 students, 5K through 2, and 30 students 3rd through 4th. As teachers, we were not included in any of the discussions pertaining to the program that we dedicate ourselves to, so we were not able to express any of our concerns or ideas for the program moving forward. One of our concerns is that these changes will limit the number of families that can utilize our dual language program. We believe that many families would potentially leave the district if there is not a spot for them in the dual language program. Keeping 2 teachers at each grade level would allow more students to stay in the program, as well as help them to focus on the 2 languages rather than defaulting to their home language. It would also allow more students from Robinson to remain in the dual language program, as it is currently being proposed to change the program to only 2 schools, Todd and Hackett. We are also concerned about the workload that will fall on one teacher teaching both languages rather than two teachers collaborating together to teach their respective language. With two teachers, one teaching English and one teaching Spanish, each teacher can focus on that language with students. When students only have one teacher that teaches both languages, the students do not always feel that both languages need to be used in the classroom and are more likely to use their primary language. We have seen that students have grown more in their reading and writing skills when each teacher focuses on one language. In a 50-50 model, collecting data in one language is a lighter load for teachers. We propose that we keep the two-teacher model for dual language, one English and one Spanish, for at least K through 2 at 2 buildings within the school district of Beloit. This would not require the district to hire more staff, as we already have one English teacher and one Spanish teacher for most grades. Please take this information into consideration when making your final decision on the program. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mrs. Schultz.
Hi, good evening. My name is Megan. Thanks for the 3 minutes. I just wanted to let everybody know this evening I had the privilege to attend the Next Steps Family Resilience Center open house. There is a child care crisis, among other crises, here in the city of Beloit and, of course, all of Wisconsin. And I just wanted to let everybody know, I don't know how the internet works with cameras, but I'll leave these in the lobby over here in the front. There are like 40 open childcare slots for a very reasonable amount of money. It's like $200 a week or something like that for some age. Yeah, right. So I just wanted to let everybody know it's an absolutely beautiful building. Ms. Fox is aware of that because it is located at Royce over on off of Liberty. So just wanted to let everybody know, and just like a lot of gratitude to Family Services and to Community Action for making that possible. And then got 2 minutes. Okay. So real quick, there was also a staff member that wanted to send in a letter, so I'm just going to quick read it on her behalf. I'm not Whitney Klein. Hello, my name is Whitney Klein, and I am the school social worker at Todd Elementary School. I'm sorry I could not be here in person today as I'm in the line serving my civic duty to vote tonight. It is very unfortunate that the proposed cut to student services is being brought up for another discussion. Though we as a district are facing a very challenging time navigating our budget and cuts, the continued attack on our student services staff is very upsetting. This is the third year we have had to educate people on our day-to-day and advocate for our roles in the building. I think many of us would agree that we would be happy to explain the ins and outs of our job as a couple of times to someone who genuinely wants to understand the gravity of the work we do. However, facing cuts consecutively year after year gives us the message that despite explaining the endless, thankless, and exhaustive work many people wouldn't last a day doing, is indeed not appreciated or valued here. It is not a secret to anyone that our district is in a crisis with continued difficult decisions to make. Our enrollment decline related to the behaviors in our buildings is one of the largest culprits. I won't continue to explain our roles and responsibilities, but I will remind and warn anyone listening that cutting student services in elementary schools is a mistake and a nightmare waiting to happen. We are already struggling and shorthanded with the staff that we do have. I assure you the violence, aggression, absenteeism, self-harm, staff retention, and education gap will only increase without the support of a fully staffed student services team. I strongly urge any board member or individual in power of making this decision who has a question on the importance or need of a school social worker, school psychologist, or school counselor in our elementary schools to come in and shadow a day in the life to see how truly expendable we are or aren't. Or thinking of, if not us, who would do the duties as assigned once we are gone. As I said earlier, I know difficult cuts that no one wants to make are here. I am asking that we consider alternatives and think outside of the box to decide what will do the least amount of damage to us as a community school district and to our students and families we serve. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other, Mrs. Schultz? Okay, thank you. Our next agenda item, reports to the board. Our first report tonight is the superintendent report, and tonight we have Dr. Leah Gordon-Malott, Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction.
Good evening. I'm sitting in for Dr. Anderson today, who has just informed that he has arrived to his destination, so we hope all of his travels have gone well. On Monday, March 30th, the board did review an early budget planning session for the 26-27 school year and the 27-28 school years. At this time, we do know that the district is facing a projected deficit of approximately $4.5 million for 26 and 27. However, there are options to reduce the impact on students and staff. Proposed cost-saving measures include reducing staff primarily through unfilled positions and delaying some major maintenance projects such as the Aldrich parking lot, exploring the use of in-district legal counsel, reducing professional development costs, and potentially selling unused district property. Together, these steps could save about $2.7 million, and looking at using some of the OPEB funds to close the remaining gap as far as meeting the demands of that $4.5 million reduction. Additionally, the board will also need to make decisions in other key areas moving forward. This includes whether to maintain all current athletic programs at the high school, how much to preserve in the reserve funds versus making reductions in services like nursing or security or perhaps counseling, and whether to add a district communication position back to our collect building. An additional planning session is also going to be needed for future technology replacements, as many student devices will need to be updated by 2029, as we heard several weeks ago. There's also an opportunity to expand after-school programming through the Boys and Girls Club using existing funds for a limited time. Additionally, the district has begun looking at the process of selecting a superintendent search firm and discussing how to involve staff and the community in that process. And as you know, the district has been exploring our partnership with Open Literacy and Skyrocket programming. The two schools that we've been working with are Converse and Gaston, and both are being considered in that process. Last Tuesday, Dr. Anderson, myself, and Lisa Furseth met to work on the selection of school and what that proposal would look like. We reviewed testing data, attendance data, and staffing, and we also worked on elements of the final agreement. And we will be continuing to work with Lisa and her team as well as meeting with the BEA on staffing incentives and bonuses. Ms. Furseth and I will be continuing to meet in Dr. Anderson's absence, and we will be continuing to update as necessary.
Thank you, Dr. Millot. Next, we have Policy and Human Resources Committee, Chairman Nichols.
Thank you, Board President Johnson. The Policy and Human Resources Committee met yesterday afternoon at 4 o'clock, and we spent the entire time talking about and discussing the HR Exhibit A, which we move forward for the board to approve tonight. But I will say one of the things, talking about teachers, we're losing like 10 longtime teachers and pairs on this sheet, and it's they've given their all for a long time, most of them over 30 years, and so they will be missed. And that goes back to what Mr. Hoey said. We got to replace and train. So anyway, that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Business Operations and Finance Committee, Chairman Hankins.
Thank you. We met today at 5. We sent to approval to the board the financials from February with not too much detail. We did talk a lot about Fund 50 and Chartwell's contract renewal for this year. We're in year 4 out of a 5-year contract. And so we got into a nice, healthy conversation about how we can better use Fund 50, i.e. Chartwell's, in providing more food to our students. And so we're, with Ms. Elwood, we're going to be talking to Chartwell's to see how we can better improve that for next year. But it's up tonight for board discussion at a later on in the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hankins. And you are up next with the legislative update.
Thank you. And I will be very short because both arms of the legislature is not in session. But I did note that the governor had a couple of bills that he did sign allowing schools, the audiovisual may be used in their busing. I know we talked about that. I remember, I think it was this last fall, about some incidents, and we did ask Durham what that thing, but anyways, it was signed in that they may, it doesn't say they have to, it just says they may have AV devices in place in their busing. Act 185, online licensing portal to license holders investigated by TBI. So it means, I think it's an HR tool that they can go into this portal and see their applicants for staffing if there's anything outstanding in that on their resume. Act 189 bans the use of drones over school buildings without the express authorization from school board. So it may be coming to play sooner or later, but that's just when I just kind of laughed at. I remember being when I was at the state convention in January, there was a lot of talk, not a lot, but there was some talk about upcoming legislation for this next term in the fall. And grooming was on the agenda. There's 3 or 4 legislation pieces that will be presented about grooming and how that addressing that with school staff. And I know that's near and dear to our heart here as we proceed through this. So that's my legislative update for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hankins. Our next agenda item is board action and discussion. First one is school calendars, the 2026-27 and the 2027-28 district calendars. Presenting, we've got Dr. Leah Gordon-Millot and Mr. Jeff Stenruse, Director of Secondary Education, CTE, and Alternative Education. The purpose of this item is to request that the Board of Education approve the calendars for the 2026-2027 and the 2027-2028 school years. Mr. Stenruse or Dr. Millot?
Hi. Thank you, Board. So when the district calendar discussion came around and sort of fell into my lap as part of my expanded role, we looked at creating a calendar that was, number one, stable and repeatable and not necessarily needing every single year to debate where holidays fell or days off fell, something that could be somewhat stable, and also a desire to have 2 years of a calendar in a row so that we can do some future planning. Most school districts around us have a calendar for next school year and the following school year already. We're really behind we're in April and we don't have a calendar for starting our July 1 school year yet. So there was a couple of pieces with this. So finding something that was a repeatable calendar, meeting DPI requirements as far as the number of instructional minutes. With this, providing a buffer for inclement weather or school closings so that we don't have to worry about making up days with very few school closing days. And then addressing some building requests, such as having daytime conferences. We did that for the first time with Beloit Memorial this year. Other entities, divisions have requested the same thing. Also, some of the BEA requests. One of the issues was night conferences, night events have never been compensated for. So there was a talk of how could we incorporate that into it. With that, and the 2-week winter break was something that was done this year and is overwhelmingly been a success. So with that, we came up with the 26-27 calendar with start dates, end dates, the professional learning dates. We again have the transition day, sort of the soft start for our new entries into each building with 4K and K. 6th grade and then 9th grade, and then starting full scale school for everybody else after that. We have some of the things that are limiting factors is really our middle school schedule and middle school times, because we are bound by Durham bus times on when we can start and stop schools. And unfortunately, the middle school has elementary-like hours for the day, but they fall under secondary hour requirements for the DPI. So that is our entity that really makes the calendar difficult with this. So what I've done is I've created 2 calendars. I know a couple of pieces that have come up for question. What is the April 23rd day off in late April? Why do we have that? What I found out is the only district employees who actually have Good Friday off are 12-month district employees. Nobody else does. So the district is having to close because of that. And some years it has fallen within spring break, such as this year. Other years it does not. And so to not be chasing that date all the time, we can have spring break in March, one of 2 weeks, and have the late April day off. And so when Good Friday falls in late April, we would adjust that to meet the Good Friday. And if it's in March, the Good Friday could be acquired in one of the 2 spring breaks most of the time. So it creates a repeatable piece of it. The late April day also does give us an extra buffer that if there is multiple school closings, we do now have a day where we could go ahead and do that, and it's not a professional learning day impacting if previously booked outside resources have been planned to come into it and now have to figure out something else to it. So that's kind of the calendar that we have. The other piece that I would point out that's a little different, if you look at the 27-28 calendar, the transition day is August 31st and not September 1. I contacted the DPI. As long as it is not a day that we count in our calculation for our school year, the term cannot start prior to September 1. It also cannot be a required day, but we can have it for transition for those grades. We can do it prior to September 1. It counts as an in-service day. So that gives us a little bit of flexibility, and actually moving forward when we move to the next year, when September 1 is a Thursday. If you couldn't hold that until September 1 Thursday, then Friday, September 2 is really your first day. Do you bring students back for one day? So it allows us a little bit of flexibility even moving forward. So those are the 2 calendars that we have, and kind of putting into a pattern that can be repeatable. And then the idea would be that we would come back next year with the calendar for the following year after that, and then continue to do that. So they will be reviewable every year, but in a 2-year cycle and moving forward. So that's the reason for the 2 calendars that they are. I appreciate some of the questions, some of the eyes on this. We had about 6 or 7 of my colleagues to help look at all the color coding and make sure dates are correct. And there are still errors that were pointed out even as of today. So thank you very much for catching those. So questions?
Do I have any? Megan Miller.
Thank you so much. First of all, I want to thank you. I know you're outside of your comfort zone a little bit here, right? And I think you've done a really thoughtful, thorough job of preparing this and putting this together. I love how thoughtful, for example, like the Friday and, being able to absorb a snow day and things like that. I do have one concern for the high school. So there are classes at the high school that are a mix, right, of seniors and other students. I'm a little concerned, and maybe I'm misreading the calendar, but I'm a little concerned about ending the year for seniors prior. So if I'm a teacher and I'm like, okay, it's finals, or it's just sort of all that end of the year stuff, I feel like that puts a huge burden on our teachers at the worst time of the year to try to navigate the discontinuity of 2 different or multiple different grades. So I'm wondering if there's any give on being able to tie it all up together for a high school.
We could. The answer is yes, we could, because high school has a little bit more flexibility. Now they would have a different calendar than elementary or middle school would. And this was an effort to try to keep the school district all ending on the same date with that. Again, we're a little bit held hostage by that middle school piece of it. So high school could have that, but then they would be an entity that would end earlier than everybody else, but you are not reading it incorrectly. And part of that also was by the shift of September 1st moving over and collecting another date, we would have one day, or we could cut short our inclement weather days. I mean, that is the other choice with this. Being from northern Wisconsin, the answer to me is no, we do not, because in the one time that we do have more days that are closed, we create a larger problem at the end. If we don't close, we get those back as instructional days, which is not a bad thing either. But you are correct. That does put a bit of a burden on those mixed classes that have seniors and other students for those 2 days. So it's all about give and take. What do you want? What do you not want? And this kept the district all at the same ending date by doing that.
Yeah, and I definitely hear that. And again, this whole thing has been very well thought out, and I see that, and I really do appreciate it. So I don't mean to be a thorn in the side. I think I like the idea of keeping it clean on the dates. I have an almost high schooler in my house. I have an almost 6th grader, and I have an almost 3rd grader. And I know that it would, children are very concerned about equity. So if something's not fair, for one, I'm gonna hear, so I think like, it's nice on paper. I think in practice, like they're kids and teachers, like we're all real people. And I mean, I think it might make a little bit more sense to, even though it doesn't look as pretty on paper, to just tie it up for the high school at the same time. I just think that's kind of, as an educator, I just wanted to voice that. But I think that everything else looks great to me. Is there a way to like talk to the high school? Or I mean, is there some flexibility where, because I don't want to hold up the process. So can you talk me through like what that might look like if?
So there is another concern. If high school has those 2 days off, then that creates an inequitable number of contract days amongst all teachers. Okay. So then we would also have to give it off to middle school and elementary, and because of the number of days that we're bound, middle school is the one that's tying us with this. Elementary and high school have more than enough days. If we were to give those 2 days off, we would be down to one inclement weather day for the district.
So I would like, is it possible for us, because again, this is important to pass, and I don't want to be a bump of the road. Is there wiggle room if we say like, this is generally wonderful, let's move forward, for us to like, I don't like survey the staff or something like that? You would need our approval again, right? If you were to play with those days, because we're approving something that has the capacity to go either way?
From my understanding, I'm not sure that the board has approved a calendar ever before.
Well, we have it. It was a really long time ago, but I don't even think we really need to.
Yeah, and with that, like I said, is there some wiggle room? The answer is yes, but because of keeping all teacher contracts at 192 days, which is what they have. Sure. By cutting those down to accommodate one division, you're now creating a problem again with we're making a compromise just to simply go without that. And I can't change the times of the day of the middle school any longer to put more in there. So I can't buy more days. So the answer is yes, it is a problem and an issue. I just didn't find another way around it in order to keep those snow days in there and keep all the teachers on the same contract.
I totally hear you. So last comments, and I'm going to get off your back here. Like I said, it's well thought out. It's good stuff. I mean, we just even heard a public comment tonight about like people feeling like a lack of staff voice and things. So what I guess my request to you would be that like I think like generally this is beautiful. It's really thoughtful. I love the 2 year. I have nothing else but good things to say. My request would be if it's possible to go back to staff and say, we could catch, here, option A, option B, and like let the staff have a voice in that. I think that it is in service of retention. It's in service of like making sure that what looks good in theory also works in practice, which is just good for everybody. So that's my request. Thank you.
Joanne Rue?
Yes, thank you. So I have a few things. One, thank you for doing 2 years. It's really nice for teachers to be able to, and families to look ahead and be able to make plans based on something that's happening 12 months from now. I do know Janesville School District, the seniors' last day I think is May 30th, and everyone else, their last day is June 10th. So I know that the different calendars for seniors, it's a thing. So I don't know if there's a way for us to find out like what works well for that or not, if there is a problem with that. And then, so along with elementary schools having more hours, I do know the high school, and I don't know if the middle school for testing, they do a all hands on deck thing, and it's one grade level that tests at a time, or a couple grade levels, like when they do the pre-ACT, the ACT, things like that. I would really like to challenge us as a district to look at possibilities at doing that at the elementary level too. For our 3rd through 5th grade students, we spend a lot of time, and our 4-year-old through 2nd grade students miss a lot of services during the time that we're doing forward testing. So I don't know of a district that does it, so like we would definitely be on the forefront of doing that kind of a thing, but I think that would be a really amazing thing to increase equity for our students. And then my last one, so I've been researching 4-day school weeks for a few years now,
And I've never broached the subject here in the district because we've always talked about, like especially at the elementary level, the need for daycare. And so with possible partnerships with the Boys and Girls Club, things like that, and our budget cuts that are happening and increasing, I think that would be another thing for us to look into as a district. I've seen some really good positive feedback about it on social media recently from people that live within the district. So those are all my just thoughts, really, not really questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Rue. Mrs. Levy?
Thank you. I'm just looking at the calendar for this year, and I see that graduation is on the 5th, but then school continues after. And I'm concerned about what those days will look like for non-seniors. So a couple questions. One, in the creation of these calendars, which grateful for the work, were there conversations with other districts that have had graduation ceremonies and then additional classroom days after that, and kind of what that looks like and what our expectations of things to be accomplished in those days? And was there a discussion about having graduation on the 12th instead of the 5th to kind of avoid some of that? Thank you.
So to address it, there was the conversation about graduation on the 12th versus the 5th was about 3 seconds, and it got shot down quite quickly just because of where graduation has normally been. Again, so that was not looked at as a perceived option. So what do? We did look at a couple of other school districts, and in the mixed classes, it creates a problem. So that coming back for those 2 days, if you have all freshmen, that doesn't necessarily affect you. If you have all seniors, now those teachers are out. But classes that have 10th through 12th grade, which we may have at the high school, those are the ones that create a problem. Some of them, they have, and I'm not saying we looked at a lot of schools, probably about 4 or 5, but they have schedule exams on those days, so they have separate senior exams and then separate underclassmen exams. That doesn't necessarily work. We found that out. I don't necessarily agree that that's a great practice because you're given now exams twice as opposed to one time. Some kids showing up. Some, they have just said it's 2 days on our calendar. It's kind of a wash. It's makeup work. It's makeup exams that they have for that. And that's really what we came up with. Again, we realize it does create a problem for those mixed classes of those kids. But when we compared it to the number of days that we needed as a district, and that middle school, and Ms. Rue, to your point of like a 40-week, we're really bound by that busing issue with middle school and how many minutes we have for that, and that does drive how we do this calendar, unfortunately, because if we get 15 minutes more a day with the middle school, then we could move all this back. We have much more flexibility. It doesn't seem like a lot, but 15 minutes a day would make a world of difference on creating this calendar.
No, I appreciate that. My only concern is I feel like graduation is the end. And whether you have a 3rd grader or an 11th grader, I don't know what those 2 additional days would look like, but it sounds like there have been some discussion with making those makeup days or work days or.
And we were saying for the lower divisions, middle school and elementary, your instruction goes up until that Tuesday. Like I said, other districts have done that for the lower grades. It really creates the issue. And I know the perception of whether you're a 3rd grader or a 6th grader or an 11th grader, graduation does seem to be the end. Yeah. We're saying it's really not. But at the high school, it's even more of that perception because those are the students who were walking your halls and now they're not expected to come back for 2 days where others are.
Thank you.
Any other board questions or comments? Dr. Malat, did you want to add anything? Okay. Is there a motion to approve the 2026-2027 and the 2027-2028 school district calendars?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Brian Nichols, seconded by Carol Fox. Any discussion? Ms. Megan Miller?
Yeah, no, I'm kind of just curious why it landed on, because I think we stopped approving calendars back in like 2020 or 2021. So, I mean, is this something that we need to continue to do? Because like I said, I don't want to get in the way of. I guess, instruction.
Do Dr. Malat or Mr. Director Stenrose, do either of you know?
Yeah, Dr. Anderson wants it approved by the board. Said it's proper practices to have it approved.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you.
We have a motion and a second. Oh, Mr. Hankins?
Yes, and this, you know, we've heard a lot about transportation, and now we're hearing transportation drives our calendar. I mean, it's driven our athletic department to go awry. This is crazy, and I understand it's a huge cost, but we're talking about our students. And my question is to Stephanie: this Durham contract, I know we have it, and when does that come up? I mean, why can't we add that 15 minutes in? We're bending over backwards for our transportation, and I just think it's high time that we're paying them. They're a service to us, and as a business person, they should cater to our needs. Thank you.
So the RFP for transportation was reviewed by many departments over the last few months. We sent out the RFP. They had about 20 days to reply to the RFP. We're still in the review process of the RFP or the proposals that came in. As far as the times go with when school starts and things, I think that's a further discussion that we're going to have at Cabinet. Because to be honest, I'm not sure what that discussion was with Durham.
Okay, I'm just, you know, as Mr. Senros was saying, you know, he's making a calendar around their busing times. That's, to me, starting.
So Dr. Anderson, I did pose the question about changing busing times for the middle school, and he confronted or talked with people at Durham and said that there wasn't anything because of the waves that we did. We even looked at the opportunity: do we put middle school and elementary students on the same bus to do that? And it wasn't. I was told it wasn't feasible. It was something that he brought up with Durham and talked to them about, and he came back and reported to me, because of working on this district calendar, saying we can't change this. We can't change that start time. That's the earliest the buses can get there. And then at the backside, we are also looking at busing, and when we meet public transportation, the buses that students may go on that end.
Okay, thank you. And then just one last question, Mr. Senros. You said it was proposed for graduation from the 5th to the 12th, and it was shot down. Who shot it down that quickly?
It was just in a discussion at our TLE and talking with high school people, that just the tradition has been, it's been that first one, and I didn't push the issue any further. It was just part of a discussion saying, should we move graduation to the 12th? And it was like, no, that's not a good idea. And so we just stopped it at that point, because we didn't need the extra days to get to that point for the seniors, and then it was just a few middle school ones.
Okay, but I do I think I kind of understand. I think what Mrs. Levy's going towards is unproductive days, just because they're days they have to come back and do it. How beneficial is that to our students to come back for 2 days? You know,
the seniors don't come back.
Right, but
seniors don't. But like, I think the point is, you know, graduation happens, then the other lower grade have to come back.
Well,
and how productive are those 2 days?
Well, if you are a K through 8 teacher, you can set, but my school year doesn't end until, so we looked at it, it also affected only a percentage of our population, the high school staff and teachers and the students in that direction, and extending it that further out just didn't seem to be the popular piece of moving school back that far. And so therefore we didn't pursue it, trying to adhere to what that tradition piece was. It can be done, but there again, it's a small percentage, and trying to look at what the overall district one, the goal was, and that's where we fell on. They're coming back for 2 days, so
okay. Again,
it's not fun.
No, and I appreciate all the hard work you put into this, and it's a no-win situation. I just don't like the idea that the transportation tail is wagging the dog.
Mr. Hankins, I remember when I was on the board 2009 to 2012, we had this same discussion about these end of the school year days, and I encourage you to reserve the term unproductive days, because even though the non-seniors are going back for those last 2 days, they are still productive days, and sometimes the production may be helping the teacher. I mean, I remember when I was in elementary school, helping the teacher close up the classroom for the school year, and there is even learning in that process as well. So there is a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Our next agenda item tonight is discussion regarding superintendent search. Tonight, Dr. Leah Gordon-Millot is leading this discussion. The purpose is to discuss the superintendent search process. Dr. Anderson recommended that the board start discussions on the process they would like to use to hire the next superintendent. He felt the board should decide whether or not they want to hire an outside search firm to assist them in the process. He also provided a list of potential search firms the board might want to interview to learn how they can assist the board in this process. This discussion tonight is to have the board determine the following. Does the board want to hire a search firm to assist the board in doing a superintendent search? If so, what criteria does the board want to consider in making this decision? And lastly, if the board determines that it wants to hire a search firm, what dates would the board like to schedule interviews of search firms? Dr. Millot?
Thank you, Board President. I do have a list of 5 search firms that Dr. Anderson has worked with and does recommend. These are frequently used by school districts in Wisconsin. He does recommend that the school board contacts these firms and get some various dates set up and times to set up to interview one or more of the firms at your discretion. So the 5 firms that he has to recommend to you are Hazard, Young, and Atea, WASB, which we have worked with before, BWP and Associates, School Executive Connect, and Ray and Associates. Recommending interviews for the school board to work with these search firms so that you are able to evaluate their processes and find the right candidate for superintendent for the school district of Beloit moving forward. And encourage you to also spend some time discussing how you can involve different staff, administrative staff, and the community in the hiring process.
Thank you, Dr. Millot. The first question, does the board want to hire a search firm to assist the board in doing a superintendent search? Ms. Miller?
Thank you so much. I am 100% in favor of hiring a search firm. And I actually had a comment, but it sounds like you're going in order. So I'll wait until you get to the next point.
Any other board members have a strong opinion or not strong opinion they'd like to share? Joanne Rue.
I know nothing about this process, so can you give me like a ballpark figure how much it costs to have a firm do this?
Rough estimate, 15 to 40,000, and I imagine it can go lower or higher depending on which service we go with. Mr. Hankins.
My only comment is, at the end of the day, it's up to the board to hire, and we should make sure that we do our due diligence in vetting whoever the candidates are, and not, if hiring an outside firm to come in and give us recommendations, that's fine. But I think the most important step will be for this board, whoever's on this board, to make sure we vet that person to fit this district. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Fox?
I have not been involved with this process either, not as a board member, and I don't know how otherwise you would do it if you don't have a search firm. I mean, board members don't really have time to do a lot of searching. The administration doesn't really have a lot of time. So without a search firm, I don't know how you could really make this process happen, is my question.
That's good point. Depending on the size of the district and the size of the Human Resources Department, Some districts might rely on the Human Resources Department to do the posting and bring the names to the board. But again, as board president, I know how difficult it is to even get the 7 of us together, that it would be much easier. And my preference would be that, yes, we do use an outside firm. I think it's going to cost us a little upfront, but the way this district goes through superintendents, if we can find a good superintendent to stay with us, it will be worth its all the investment. Mrs. Levy.
Thank you. Just did a quick search on the WASB site, and their typical search process runs between $10,000 and $15,000. So just to give us some framework for a potential cost.
Are there any board members that feel strongly in not using an outside search firm? Okay, then we will go ahead and begin the process of deciding which search firm. The next thing we have to consider is what criteria in selecting a search firm do we want to use. Dr. Anderson has listed these 5. I have not myself done a search to find out if there are other firms we should consider, but selecting this firm is also important so that we get a good pool of candidates and that the search firm understands our needs as a district and what we are looking for and how much we want them to do, if we want them to take over the working with the public and getting input from the public, all kinds of different things that we can look at in this selection process. Ms. Miller?
Thank you so much. I totally agree with everything you just said. And so just, I guess, as I was considering that second bullet point, the categories that came to mind for me for criteria would be cost, the communication, the extent to which they're willing to manage and engage in communication with not just obviously the district, but within the wider community. And the last point for me is it's like a 2-part piece. It's community engagement in general, which I believe is separate necessarily from communication. And I'm looking for a firm that has some experience and is willing to coordinate listening sessions, kind of input, roundtable stuff about our next superintendent alongside the work that we're going to need to do for the referendum, the budget. There are so many huge decisions, right, that we're on the precipice of. So for me, I think it would be, again, I guess the 3 categories for me are cost, community engagement, and communication. Asterisk on community engagement, somebody who's willing to do that work in tandem with or has experience doing that alongside that referendum work. And then just last comment, when you mentioned Board President Johnson, helping us figure out, profiling essentially our next candidate. Every search firm is going to do that as part of their process. I do think it would be a value for us when we get to the next point about establishing dates to maybe come up with do we want to do any of that brainstorming ahead of time so we can have an informed conversation when we do those kind of interview pieces. So thank you.
Carol Fox?
I don't know how to assess it exactly, but the first thing that came to my mind was track record. How well the match that they have helped make between a community and a superintendent has worked. What is the longevity of the superintendents that have been placed by this firm? Kind of a follow-up with how happy everybody has been. Because we really need a good match between us and the community and everybody. And so, I don't know how you assess that exactly, but if we could figure out a way to know what success some of these firms have had with placing superintendents that have longevity with districts, that would be a criteria for me.
Thank you. Mrs. Levy?
Thank you. So I have a short list that I hope my colleagues are interested in entertaining. I would, along the lines of what Ms. Fox said, I think it would be helpful. So I've participated in more superintendent searches than I think I needed to. But that being said, one of the things that we did is we broke up the list, and as board members, we called references. I think it would be appropriate to speak to districts that what other firm we're considering has worked with and ascertain some of the information that Ms. Fox is suggesting. Other items I think it would be important for us to keep in mind is we're looking for a pool of candidates that has experience with our size, demographics, challenges, and opportunities of our district. I think we are unique, and we need to state that from the front. The search process methodology, so how do they foresee us engaging our community stakeholders is super important. Their availability and responsiveness, I think, is going to be critical for any search that this district does. I already talked about kind of reputation references, so calling previous districts and finding out what their experience was and did they find a good match for their district. And then if there's any like post-placement support, so if there's any transition for the new superintendent, I know WASB does offer some of that. I would be interested if other firms or teams do that as well. And then if there's any like kind of guarantee, which may seem odd because you're hiring a human, but I know one of the things WASB did is because we had to do our next search so close to the most recent search at that time, there was a discounted amount for that second search. So if the person does not stick, for lack of a better phrase, kind of what are they offering or willing to offer to the district? So those are some things that I would just like for us to keep in mind as we think about a superintendent search.
Thank you. Brian Nichols?
Well, I just didn't get my hand up quick enough, but I was thinking very much along the line of both Board Member Fox and Board Member Levy. But I think it was as I was sitting here listening before, because of the track record that we've had, that we definitely need to hold them accountable. You need to interview the firms and get the records that you ask for. How successful have they been? What's the longevity of their average superintendent placement? How long is it? How long have they lasted at whatever the district they got placed at? I think that's valuable. Yeah, you can do that by phone interviews, but I would ask the search firm for that information right off the bat, and then kind of go from there. So anyway, and by the way, enjoy it while you're doing that. Thank you.
Thank you for that reminder, Brian. We'll be thinking of you as we're going through the process.
I may come and watch.
Carol?
I'm just wondering, with these 5 firms, obviously, from the conversation, obviously, we've used WASB before. Have we used any of these other firms before?
Mrs. Schultz, do you want to answer that one?
Sure. I can tell you that we have definitely used Hazard, Young, and Atia. We've used WASB. We used School Exec Connect, and I'm not sure if we used Ray and Associates or we just interviewed them. I had told President Johnson that I could find out which ones we had used for which superintendents, because obviously with my tenure, I've been through several interview processes. And I can tell you that the things that you're talking about, every single one that we've interviewed has all of that information, and they will interview and tell you almost everything that you're asking. And then whichever one you go with does everything that you're talking about from my experience of working with them.
Thank you. Did you have any other questions, Mrs. Fox? Okay. Megan Miller?
Thank you so much. Love everything that everybody said. I think this has been a really great discussion. I do want to include, because we've talked about longevity a few times. So on average in the U.S., a superintendent stays for about 5.5 years in a given district. However, Wisconsin has a much higher turnover rate, and I think the last I think they did, this might be 2022 or 2025 data, I'll have to double check, but I think the average term is 3 years across the state, not here, like across the state of Wisconsin. I know back in 2022, we turned over 1/4 of the superintendents across the entire state. So, given that information, I think part of that kind of alignment that we'll need to do as a board going into sort of just even interviewing our candidates for search firms is going to be to really ground ourselves in, we want to have that good, maybe like 3 to 5 year person, and then like, what does that look like in the future? I know back when I first got elected, Tony Capizzello came and gave a really good public comment. I thought about giving, kind of creating a 10-year vision. And I mean, I think we need to build in some resilience for what will be leadership turnover, which is likely to happen. So this is a great discussion. I agree with what everybody is saying, but I do want us to be realistic about what we're talking about right now with longevity.
Thank you. Okay, for criteria, it sounds like we've got cost, communication, community engagement, track record, experience, references, post-placement support, possible guarantee, and looking at average longevity of placement. Mrs. Shope, would you mind, so that we're not all having to go through our calendars tonight and use valuable board time, would you mind polling the board to see when we can get the 7 of us and the candidates, or I guess tomorrow we'll know better, we'll have the election results, but find out when we can get together and contact these groups for us? Thanks. Mrs. Fox?
Well, I was thinking if Michelle could sort of contact them and get a kind of a ballpark figure of what they might want in terms of money, and maybe we need to decide if we really want to interview all 5, or if there's a couple of them that may be too pricey for us, or what we might want to do, because I think 5 might be kind of a lot to interview. So somehow we need to kind of narrow it down to maybe 3.
Okay, Mrs. Shope, would you mind sending out a request for that information?
I did.
Thank you. Oh, Mr. Hankins?
Yeah, one last comment about the criteria. It'd be interesting for me to know how big is the net they throw. I mean, how do they outreach to, possible candidates? Is it, it'd be interesting to know. And I know you said cost, so I think that covers what Mrs. Fox was getting to, so we should know that. But yeah, I want to know how big of a net they throw. Thank you.
Mr. Hankins, and just doing a quick survey of these 5, the HYA is national and considered top tier. The BWP is more regional, but they will also do national. Ray and Associates National School Exec Connect is smaller, but they will do national, and WSB focuses more on state. Okay. Dr. Malat, was there anything else that you wanted to add before we move on? Okay, thank you. Our next agenda item is budget guidance. Presenting this is Carol Fox. The purpose of this is to have the board provide guidance to the administration to develop a comprehensive written 2026-2027 budget plan. At the March 30th budget workshop, Dr. Anderson presented a tale of 2 budgets, the preliminary budget considerations for 2026-2027 and 2027-2028 school years. This included potential options for these budgets and projections for the following year. Tonight's discussion is to decide what specific guidance the board wants to give the administration. Mrs. Fox?
Yeah, and do want to apologize. I was fiddling with the title. I'm kind of OCD about some things, but I took the word draft off and I didn't remember to put it back on. It's just a draft. It's not. It's just an item for discussion for the board. As I was reviewing this and thinking about the last couple of years and some of the budget things we've been through, I really think the board needs to ask for some better information or some more detailed information about things. We need to have more than what we're cutting. We need to have ideas about how we're going to proceed and plans for that. And to the point of the alternative calendar options, that was something that has been discussed in the past. It wasn't anything in particular. It's just looking at how I agree. I think the CPI is important. But, we have another $4.5 million to cut. So we want to look at all options. But I also, so the one I was really looking at was more the written details of, what is the plan? If we switch around academic coaches, what is the plan for providing coaching or staff development? We're changing around DLI and some of these other things. What is the preliminary plan for providing ESL? We're thinking of and only having 2 GT. What are we doing about that? A discussion was eliminating nursing. What's the plan to go around with that? And I didn't add counseling to that. I should have, because what are we going to do about some of those counseling services? He talked a lot about maybe reusing the grant money, which I think is fine, but what is the plan for using it and how does that match with some of the restrictions that we have? We talk about not filling positions that we haven't filled, but we don't know what those are. We need to know what they are so we know whether we're willing to let them go or not. And those kinds of things. So I think it's important that we're clear about the information we want to know and have so we can make truly informed decisions. And I think it's important too so community and staff both are aware of some of the things that we're looking at and can make comment. And I still do think that at some point we need involvement with the staff, so some sort of a finance committee that can look at some of these things and help with some of those items. I put things like the facilities and the vacant land and stuff last because there's just no guarantee that we're going to be able to sell that stuff. I mean, yeah, we might be able to get some money for it, but there's no guarantee. So that's kind of why it's lower on the list. But like I said, it's just a draft of looking at some ideas. I also was reading some of those emails and what is a plan for addressing behaviors. We're looking at alternative school for the elementary or alternative placement for the elementary. Are there other plans or other things that we should be doing for addressing our dysregulated students, especially if we're thinking that we need to cut student services staff because we don't have the money to afford it. And, we want to keep the lower class sizes down. So this kind of goes along with the next one in terms of what he was asking for. So that's the idea of this draft.
Thank you, Mrs. Fox. Megan Miller?
Thank you. Yeah, I was just saying, Ms. Fox, thank you so much for putting this together. I think it's a really great start to the conversation, and I think it captures a lot of what we talked about last time. A couple of things I wanted to, so this isn't like a comprehensive takeaway, but I did want to just include a couple of comments on your draft. So first, looking at item number 3, here, let me just pull it up again. So for item number 3, where you've got prioritized district programs, initiatives that drive student enrollment, I think part of that request has to be kind of twofold. One, we want to kind of be able to consider, just from a high level view, from a board perspective, what is the ROI on that? But we also have to define what that is, because you could look at it in terms of retaining or enrolling and attracting students, but also, the kids we have deserve to be invested in regardless, right? And so I think we are going to need more time as a board and, partnership with administration and the staff in our district
to define like what does ROI mean to us? How do we prioritize that? So that's one thing I wanted to kind of add. I'm thinking about this in terms, usually I go to a T-chart, but I'm kind of thinking in terms of like concentric circles. Like I'm thinking there's like services at the core, and then outside of that there's programs. And all of them are important, and we don't want to not do any of them. I think for me, as much as I've been a very passionate advocate, for example, of our academy model, I am willing to let go of an academy model if it means keeping elementary school counselors, right? You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, I think like, I'm not saying what we should or shouldn't do today right now, but I think we do need to do a little bit more conceptualizing and categorizing, because that's going to help us guide the discussion. And it's not going to be like picking and choosing as much as, you know, like to your point, we have to have a vision for how we want to proceed, right? So I think that would help with that discussion. Another thing that I wanted to add on there, I guess there's just two more things I want to add on there specifically. One thing that I would add as its own separate item, just because of the demographics and, you know, traditionally like what we've been doing to grow our services in Beloit, would be DLI. I mean, this is, we just had a great conversation. I don't know if great's the right word. I think we've done great work around taking a next step to try to, like to your point, Ms. Fox, preserve. I don't think anybody's thrilled with having to cut things to keep things, but I think that needs to be, there's so much confusion and upset in the community about that. I think we want to make sure that we're providing a clear vision for like, what does that next step look like? What does that look like year 2, year 3? And making sure that we're aligning our budget priorities around preserving and then growing back that program as robustly and as quickly as possible, you know? But, you know, we are where we are. It's the hard truth. But we do need to provide a vision to the community to say, we're cutting it to keep it, but now this is how we're going to keep it, right? Kind of that second part of that question. So that would be another thing I would add. And then the third and final thing I think that needs to be highlighted on the document is Fund 80. So I mentioned earlier, you know, like even just this beautiful event I was just at with Family Services and Community Action. We talked about the Boys and Girls Club. I am so excited about that. Also, like I would like to see and. We have such a high number of nonprofit work that, you know, that's happening here in Beloit. There must be additional partnership opportunities, if not like next year, that we can do that work right now to pave the way. It helps our budget. It helps us be responsible to the community, and like we're investing funds in things that support our kids and our families, you know, outside of school as well as inside of school. So for some reason, I think it was maybe from the next item. Yeah, I know it's in there, but when I went back and looked at this, I'm like, oh, I thought there was a point. So I do think like if we're going to provide this as a comprehensive draft to guide administration, which I think is a brilliant idea, I just want to make sure that Fund 80 is on there as like that to me should be a priority for like, let's get, you know, Mark Rand, Mark Perry, like all the folks in the room with Dr. Anderson when he's back from vacation, and like, let's start that brainstorming.
This May 5th date.
Oh, I didn't even notice that. You're fine. Okay, thank you. Does that cool? Okay.
Yeah. I do, you know, and Fund 80, we do need to be careful about the tax impact and some of those kinds of things. But yeah, I fully support that. And we can either add a separate DLI one or just add it to the programming. We talked about needing an audit of some of our programmings too. We need to, you know what kind of programs we have and the impact of what we do on some of those programs as well. But
any other board questions or comments? Mrs. Fox, do you want time to make adjustments to this? Do you want the board to take an action on this tonight?
Well, it probably needs a few adjustments, so it would be hard to take action on it without a few adjustments. But we need to not let it linger because we need to make sure the administration knows that this is what, and this will give them a start to know what we're kind of looking for as we formalize it, I guess, would be what I would say.
Yeah, maybe what I would suggest is send that to Dr. Malat as a draft, and so they know that we're working on this and that there are other considerations, but it's a good, awesome outline to starting with. And that leads us into our next item, which is the budget discussion. And bear with me a minute. Okay. Dr. Leah Malott is leading this presentation with assistance from the executive directors. The purpose of this is to have the board make some general decisions regarding the 2026-2027 budget so administration can continue preparing a draft budget for the board to review at the end of May or the beginning of June. And Dr. Malott, do you want to start?
Sure. The team has been working together to look at our budget, where we stand now, and possibilities for where we can make some eliminations for next year and in the following year. And all areas are being explored. As we discussed a little earlier, I will let Stephanie elaborate on financials.
Thank you. And while we're waiting for Stephanie to come, on the agenda, there are some of the questions listed that we need to address. Does the board want administration to add $100,000 to the athletic budget so that all current athletic teams can operate at the 25-26 level? Or does the board want to have administration work with Athletic Director Gratz to reduce our current athletic offerings so that it can operate under the budget levels established for those other years? What do we want to do with the vacant properties, Fund 80, legal counsel, communications director, and use of OPEB funds? Director Elwood?
Thank you, President Johnson. So the team has been meeting and discussing things, and one of the charges that Dr. Anderson gave us was to look at staffing and see where we could make some adjustments. We do have a number of open positions. Some positions had not been filled for a number of years, but a lot of the positions are filled with contracted staff, meaning that we do need those positions, and we need to take a look at where our district is going to be in 1 and 2 years so that we can adjust that staffing down. Now, that's going to have to take a lot more conversations with principals and with staff that are affected to decide which positions we need to eliminate. Dr. Anderson did ask us to look at, our own departments and things and see if we could come up with $1 million of savings. And I think we're about, correct me if I'm wrong, Leah, about halfway there with just positions that have not been filled and that we've agreed that we could make workarounds and do without those positions. I think there's still some more work that we need to do as a team to go through those other positions. It's still a work in progress, but we also need the board to make some decisions too, though, about, like you have on the list, athletics and some of the other department decisions, to give us some direction as to which programs and which departments we're willing to do without. Because if we add to one, we have to take away from something else.
Thank you. Would it just be most efficient for you tonight if we just went down this line of questions and worked through them?
I think so, yes.
Okay, so let's take a look at the first one. Does the board want administration to add $100,000 to athletic budget or reduce the current athletic offerings? Mrs. Levy.
Thank you. I just want to know how much of that question is realistic. And the reason I ask is because it's my understanding spring athletics, the seasons have already started. Schedules are already out. I'm not sure if transportation contracts have already been solidified. So I understand the question, but how much of that is realistic at this point?
I think the question is more for 26, 27, what the plan is.
Yes, and I'll
less
jump
of
in.
what we're going to do for 25, 26, because you're right, we are already within the seasons.
And Mrs. Levy, Dr. Anderson has guaranteed me that we are going to have a spring season. He's going to find the money to cover it. So we're looking at 26, 27.
Perfect. Thank you so much. If I could pivot, it would be helpful for me and maybe for others, but I don't want to speak for anyone else, to hear from Mr. Gratz and find out what places within the athletics and activity budget do we have the most flexibility to do cuts without impacting the fewest number of students?
And I did want to just jump in here, that maybe this is a discussion for tonight and not a decision-making, and maybe the board needs more information that'll come through this discussion.
So we can, excuse me. So we can speak fairly broadly about our easiest locations to find dollars, right? You've seen the year-to-year comparisons. Roughly $318,000, roughly $321,000, and then a significant drop to $255,000 with no cuts. There has to be, in order to even come close to that, just for ballpark numbers, we have roughly 23 programs and $255,000. Rough math tells us about $10,000 per program. That's almost impossible, with the cost of everything. That would include transportation, that includes equipment, apparel, paying officials, paying event workers, all of those things. Our ask is simply basically adding roughly $5,000 per program. And again, that seems like a lot, but as an example, equipment right now is one of our larger costs. To buy a basketball, you can buy a relatively cheap basketball. To buy a basketball approved by NFHS and WIA, about $85 to $95. If we wanted to buy each of our programs 6 basketballs, we've eaten up the entirety of their equipment budgets just to do that. So this ask is with costs rising. We have spaces to do to make cuts, but everything we do would be a reduction in events. It would be a reduction in staff, equipment, apparel, which we're already what we believe is at bare bones. In one large space, we've kind of have 3 options that we've surmised for the last 6 to 9 months. One is co-oping programs. Our numbers are hurting in certain spaces, but regardless, we still put out the same amount of money, right? We still have to pay the stipends of coaches, we still have to pay all those things. Co-oping can assist in reducing costs, and on the other side, also assist in increasing our numbers because it spreads the dollars out over a per athlete basis. So we still have the ability, if we have running a program with 12 athletes, as an example, and we double the numbers, it's the cost of running that program increases slightly, but the cost to us decreases per athlete, if that makes sense. And we can definitely provide more specific examples, but that's one option. The question of co-ops can happen as soon as next year if we hit specific deadlines. We could co-op in certain spring sports in the spring of 27, if we hit a May 1st deadline for approval of co-ops. We have those, we've vetted those out. I don't know that the board has already approved co-ops in the past for hockey. We had a conversation in one of our last meetings about lacrosse co-ops and us joining a co-op. So those conversations have been had and can continue to be had if need be. The second piece is revenue generation sources. We feel we have a proposal internally on the table, our office does, to try to increase outside usage of outside spaces. And with that, to also fundraise more efficiently internally. So to put money directly into our programs, to condense concessions directly. So our student athletes are running it. Our students in MEO or Student Senate or something like that, those dollars are going directly back in. Those would help then supplement some of the budgeting, right? So that $100,000 maybe decreases slightly. We're already paying for a great deal from fundraising dollars. It's not a good process, but we're all making cuts, so we have to find a way to try to supplement those things. And then the last piece is not a recommendation. I'll steal kind of some verbiage from Dr. Anderson. It's not a recommendation, but it's the best maybe of bad options, and that's to eliminate middle school sports in totality. And that's 80 to 100,000 as proposed in Dr. Anderson's presentation. And by eliminating that, we're basically just reallocating dollars to the high school to offset that budget, that budget deficit that we currently have. And then it would be up to us to backfill with community partners. Our intent is to make athletics look almost identical through the use of community partners, YMCA, Boys and Girls Club, Rising Tide, groups that have been established throughout the city, Bullitt Youth Football, things like that, to run those sports after school, to allow for those student athletes to still have the feel of after school sports. It just comes from a different funding source. That proposal that I mentioned earlier, with that would be even more important because we would need somebody to manage all those things. And that is right now, community use is managed partly, well, I should say mostly by the business office and Jenny Miller, and we assist in whatever way we can. But that's, the pie has to get bigger. If we're gonna ask more time out of those things, there needs to be people power to be able to assist. So, and again, that proposal is on the table internally and is being discussed. So long answer, I apologize, but those are the options that we've come up with.
No, that is great context. My initial question was what areas do we have flexibility to cut? And it sounds like what you're proposing possibly is middle school sports. If I had understood the information that you provided, is that co-opting may be a way for us to maintain student participation but cut some of our cost? Is that accurate?
It's possible, right? Like I said, we would have to do a more accurate cost benefit. We have a good idea from hockey already. Hockey is a massive cost sport to most schools running it solely with one district. We split ours over multiple. It still allows our student athletes to participate, but at a much lower cost to the district.
So my concern is, it sounds like we would need to approve those co-ops by May 1st of this year for the next school year. Is there a plan to bring that before the board as an option between now and May 1st?
It's possible. It's next spring. Again, these discussions have been happening internally. We absolutely can have that ready by our next board meeting and be voted on and approved. We've kind of been working, doing our, I guess, for lack of a better phrase, doing my job and coordinating with all schools around us to see those opportunities. And so they're there and available if we are prepared to do that prior to our next meeting. That just simply takes a board, once we kind of do our piece, we submit all of our information to the WOA. It's literally just a vote and signature after a discussion.
Okay, so just one of 7, that's a lot of information. I think we need to do a budget workshop or series of budget workshops so we can get all of this information together. Again, I'm very concerned if the board would need to make decisions about co-op by May 1st and it is April 7th. I'm concerned that we haven't already seen those options if a decision needs to be made so quickly. But I would love for this board to get those opportunities scheduled so we can get more information and make holistic decisions when it comes to the budget. Thank you.
Carol Fox?
I think we have to do that. Whether we're ready to do the rest of the budget or not, if you have to have it done by May 1st, we need to go ahead and start working on that. I don't see how we can be talking about cutting counselors and doing some of the other things we're talking about and not looking at cutting sports and making changes there. Not that we want to cut it totally, but we need to be making changes. And I'm wondering, we were talking earlier about Fund 80, whether some of this, if we do the middle school plan and some of those kinds of things, if we could move some of that into Fund 80, if it's a more general community kind of thing. Maybe we could continue doing some of our things if we do Fund 80 and it would open it up to kids who are in some of these other schools. So that to me is an option, but if you've got a plan that you've been working on, I think that needs to come forward. Because we have to be looking at that. We can't not look at that. It's my opinion.
Tom Hankins?
Well, I agree that the time is of the essence, especially May 1 looming very quickly, so we need to make a decision. So Mr. Gratz has the wherewithal to get that in by May 1st, and board action is needed. More information, I know Dan has been working on this for a while internally. He said it out loud a couple times, but we need to have the specs, and he has them, I believe, but we just got to get it in front of us so we can vote on it. And we had just one more board meeting, but a special board meeting, a budget board meeting, it's got to be done. I had a question, and this is not to Dan, it's to Stephanie, and it's more about the overall. So we have this budget that we budgeted year after year for these positions that go unhired. What happens to those funds? I mean, we talk about a $4.5 million. To me, we're over in our budget for staff. Is that correct or incorrect? If we're not hiring, if we didn't fill those slots, the 30 slots that are still available, does that carry over then?
It doesn't carry over. It's a new budget year after year.
What happens to those dollars that we budgeted?
So when you come to the year end, you're not really looking at the budget compared to your expenditures. You're looking at your expenditures versus your revenues. So when we came to year end last year and we had about $250,000 left, that was revenues versus expenditures. If we had taken our expenditures versus our budget, we had about $2 million left because we had a revenue also of about $2 million for OPEB dollars to move in that we did not do. So when we start talking about all these positions that we had budgeted for, we also didn't have revenue to cover those. Does that make sense?
Right, we didn't put OPEB in. So.
Correct, we did not put the revenue in.
So at the year end, it just washes out.
It washes out, yep.
Okay, thank you.
Megan Miller?
Thank you. This is one of several questions, so I don't want to belabor this for too long, but I think what will cover some of the other bullet points. I really liked what my colleagues have said about maybe, because we love meetings, maybe scheduling, well, really just like a workshop style thing where we can sit down. I mean, this isn't really conducive, Mr. Gratz, for us to have like, a good in-depth, meaningful conversation. And we want to honor the work that you're doing and really figure this out, right? And so I would be in favor of us, setting up a time to sit down and maybe just focus on athletics, like just focus on like, maybe by program. I did have a question about partnership with the city. So I am in the dark about the city, other than I looked into their strategic plan, and one of their strategic priorities, and here I just pulled it up again, it's like under goal 1, there's a lot here. It's goal 1, item B2, support programming for youth and continue coordination between local agencies that provide services to youth. And then they name just kind of broadly just, some performance measures. I don't think anybody's flush with cash right now, but like small things working together maybe can maybe take some of the edge off of some of these shortfalls. And what I'm wondering is, I'm curious to what extent you have or would be willing to explore if we were to be able to like utilize Fund 80, if it's not too much of a tax burden, right, for folks to be inclusive to help the city meet that goal. Is the city able then to invest some of their dollars in their strategic goal to invest in youth?
So holistically, we've been working with all of our community partners incredibly closely, including the city. The answer is we can, and we've part of this proposal that I've spoken on. And if you're curious, we can share that proposal with you all. It's working. I can easily share that at any point. I was trying to go through the proper channels to make sure that everybody's aware and wants to do these things. The city has a vested interest, obviously, in facility sharing, in facility usage, and a variety of things. One thing we're not lacking is facility space right now. We have space everywhere that I believe, and I have since I've arrived, that is underutilized. And so we're working through that. Working closely with Ms. Elwood and trying to navigate Fund 80 because it's an incredibly complex space, and I have to trust our finance team to guide us through that. And so I throw ideas at her all the time, and she has to turn me. She's like, nope, that's not going to work. Or, well, we can look into it. So it's very nuanced. So yeah, absolutely we are. And that, established community partners that have been around a long time are where we're going to start if there are cuts to anything. The reason that middle school continues to come up is because it's not governed by a state association, so we can do a lot more. We have a lot more flexibility. At the high school level, if we cut a sport, we can't compete because the WA governs all high schools in the state. So it really creates issues with competition, whereas middle school, we can still do these things, excuse me, offer these things for our students to be able to do that. So hopefully that answers that question.
It does. I would love to see that put together, you know, whatever you have put together, if we could see that, and that way we can share it, because that's part of our role as the board, like share that out with the community so people don't just see like, oh, they're cutting middle school sports. We can say, we're transforming how we do middle school sports. I want to be truthful and clear with how we communicate, because these are all going to be painful measures. Even though what you're sharing sounds great, bless you, we have to make sure that people understand what we're doing. So please do send that along, and definitely appreciate it. Thank you.
Joanne Rowe.
Yes, thank you. All right, couple things. So, every little bit helps. So back when my children were in sports, there were games, tournaments, whatever, that we were part of that were kind of not part of our own conference. But we did it just, you know, it's kind of a fun thing. We get a little bit more playtime. Is that an area that we can take away a little bit to, and with the transportation, referees, all that stuff, it all adds up a little bit. Is that an area that we have a little wiggle room?
Yeah, with our, you know, again, 20 plus programs, cutting one event, whether it be home or away, per team would save in the ballpark of 1,000 to 1,500, and that, you know, that equates to roughly 20,000, right? It's absolutely possible. There's negative implications in certain sports by doing that, because essentially rankings and seeding is based on maximizing your games, and so if we have one less than everybody else, so, you know, again, if that means if us being hindered slightly by that, but it means saving a teacher or a counselor or whatever, I think everybody is going to be okay with that on my end, and so, and including my, you know, myself. That's absolutely something we're looking into, and how we can get closer to navigating that,
And possibly save a couple of sports that otherwise I mean, everything is. I don't know. We've got to make cuts somewhere. So you were talking about we have underused facilities. I remember when we did the big referendum the last time around, all of our schools, the kitchens that we added on, they were all made in a certain way so that they would be able to be rented out to people or groups or whatever things that were going on too. So I love the idea of looking into how to create some revenue with our buildings, pool, our beautiful pool. We were supposed to be able to attract all these, you know, extra tournaments and things there too, our track. So there's places where I see you've got some ideas on things that we can use and maybe help us out a little bit in that area. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. We are almost at 8 o'clock. I would entertain a motion to extend the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Brian Nichols, seconded by Amy Levy. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Carol Fox.
Since we just extended our meeting, but in the essence of time, I do think we probably do need to set up a separate workshop, because we've barely gone through that first item, and we can't come to consensus on much of that either. But you know, I don't know what to do about some of these other ones. I don't know that I have enough information, and things like, can we, should we consider posting for legal counsel? You know, we need more information about how much that would cost. Restoring positions using OPEB. The OPEB depends on how much money we need left, right? So I guess I really do think we need to kind of schedule a different time to go through all of these things and really have a thorough discussion about them and not start at 8 o'clock at night on a Tuesday night. Except maybe if we can't get it soon enough, you know, if you've got to go ahead and do that stuff by May 1st, that might be a little different. But some of these don't necessarily they need a real thorough discussion. And I'm not sure that, I think a workshop might be a better time to really dig into some of these and maybe get some of the more information from some of the stuff that I was asking for previously in terms of how does this impact our programming and what are some alternatives and what are we thinking about in terms of, you know, we haven't filled those positions. People have been doing this work. How difficult has it been? You know, do we need to get rid of some of the work? I mean, there's a lot of things to discuss about some of these things. And I think maybe we ought to table the rest of that and schedule a workshop.
Is that a motion?
If it is, I'll second.
I'll make it a motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Carol Fox and a second by, who was the second? Megan Miller. Any, Amy Levy.
Thank you so much. I would just recommend instead of table, because that just kind of means throw it into the pit, that we postpone to some date prior to May 1st.
That's what I said.
Oh, well, you said table, so if we could agree.
No, you heard me wrong. That's what I said, postpone.
Okay. If we could agree and then ask Ms. Shope to kind of gather availability, that would be awesome. Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Our next agenda item is the consent agenda. Typically, there is no separate discussion on the item unless a board member so requests, in which event the item or items will be removed from the general order of business and considered in their normal sequence on the agenda. Are there any board members that would like any of these items removed? Mrs. Levy.
Thank you. Item D is in dog, please.
Are there any other items other than D? Can I get a motion for approval of B, C, E, F, and G?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Brian Nichols, seconded by Amy Levy. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item D, approval of meeting minutes, February 17th. Mrs. Levy.
Thank you. Just really quickly, on page 7, right above number 8, consent agenda, it says move approval of accepting the Hendricks Family Foundation proposal, and then it gives some details, and then it says that this will be postponed for 2 weeks, March 3rd, and conduct a final board workshop on this matter. Now, I had some technical difficulties, so I wasn't present virtually for that portion of the meeting. But here's the thing. If this is what actually happened while I was out of the meeting, then why did we vote again to move into contract if that had already been decided at this meeting?
I don't remember that happening. Mrs. Shope, can you help us out there?
So that was the motion that was made because somebody had made the motion to accept the proposal from the Hendricks Foundation in order to have the discussion. And then the board was concerned, and Lisa Furseth was sitting in the audience because people were saying we should vote that down. And then somebody said, if we vote that down, are we voting, is that considered a no vote? And she was sitting in the audience nodding her head. And so then people were talking about, well, how can we do that? And so then there was the amendment made to postpone for 2 weeks and do the one more workshop to try to get other questions answered and whatnot.
So here's my concern. If it happened, which I trust you.
Yep.
But if it happened the way you're describing it,
Yep.
then the board voted to accept, well, and it's kind of, that's neither here nor there. We already had that conversation. No reason to relitigate. To move forward with a contract that still has to come back before the board, then why in the world did we have this vote again after we had the workshop, is my question.
My guess is because it's taken us this long to get these minutes completely done and approved, that after that workshop or at that workshop, nobody remembered that that was the way the vote had gone down. That everybody was just remembering that you didn't vote yes for it, but you didn't vote no for it, because the no would have put you into a no vote. So I think that's why you re-voted to move forward with getting a contract in place, you know, having it come back from after both parties had worked on it, bringing it back for the contract to be approved. Because I don't think anybody realized what this vote was until
And you went
I've
back
gone
and
back
listened
to several
it
times
and
and
got it.
listened to bits and pieces to get it completely down.
Yeah, and I do believe because the subsequent vote was to have the district work with the Hendricks Family Foundation to have a contract and bring it to the board, and that was the most recent vote. I think that's what takes precedence here, if I'm understanding this correctly.
Well, fortunately, we voted on the same thing twice.
Right.
Because if it was different, someone would have to rescind it. I just was not aware that this was decided before the workshop. But thank you for going back and making sure that we are clear with what happened. Thank you.
Is there a motion to approve item D?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Brian Nichols, seconded by Carol Fox. Any other discussion here? Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So I am glad, Board Member Levy, that you brought that up because I did not catch that part of the minutes, so I did not do a careful job reviewing that. So my apologies. I am uncomfortable with. I'd have to go back and honestly, I guess, rewatch it. I'm not trying to be a pain, Michelle, but I thought we had amended the motion, because I remember Brian made the motion right out the gate, and then we had a much longer discussion because we talked about, do we have to vote that down? I know where you're at there. Where I thought we were with the amendment, though, was that was where that language came from, was like we would agree to consider it after the workshop, because that's what we had discussed. So I'm not entirely comfortable voting for the minutes, to be honest. I just would need, and I apologize, it's my lack of being prepared because I didn't see that line. That's just not what's in my notes and how I think we proceeded, which we wouldn't have needed to meet then. The whole point of amending the motion was to say we wanted the opportunity to sit down before voting to move forward with a contract or to create a contract. So that's kind of just my position on it.
Thank you. Mrs. Shope, can we get a roll call on this one? Thank you.
Ready for the roll call? Okay. Carol Fox?
Aye.
Tom Hankins?
Aye.
Amy Levy?
Nay.
Megan Miller?
Nay?
Brian Nichols?
Aye.
Joanne Rue?
Nay.
Tia Johnson?
Aye.
Motion carried 4-3.
Thank you. The next agenda item, Human Resources, Exhibit A. Are there any open session questions regarding Exhibit A? Are there any closed session questions regarding Exhibit A?
Oh, I couldn't get my hand up. Mine is quick enough. Mine is open.
Okay, go ahead.
And actually, not a question. As Board Member Nichols mentioned, we have, I think, 8 folks on the recommendation that have given 25 years plus of service to our district. So I just want to pause and say thank you. That's a lot of years and a lot of dedication and a lot of work. And I just wanted to pause for a moment to say thank you.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve Exhibit A?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Brian Nichols, seconded by Carol Fox. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. The next item, a motion may be made and a vote taken to convene the Board of Education into closed session pursuant to Section 19.85, Parent 1, Parent F of the Wisconsin State Statutes for the purposes of reviewing expulsion orders of the independent hearing officer pursuant to Section 120.13, Parent 1, Parent E 4.h of the Wisconsin State Statutes. The Board of Education shall, upon review, approve, reverse, modify the orders, and pursuant to Section 19.85, Parent 1, Parent E of the Wisconsin State Statutes relative to the purchase, sale of properties. Is this, am I reading the right one? I'm sorry, maybe I was reading the older one. Board of Education, 19.85, Parent 1, Parent F, considering financial, medical, social, or personal histories of disciplinary data or a specific person's preliminary consideration of specific personnel problems or the investigation of charges against specific persons except where Parent B applies, which, if discussed in public, would likely to have a substantial adverse effect upon reputation of any person referred to in such histories or data or involved in such programs or investigations. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Brian Nichols, seconded by Amy Levy. Any discussion? Mrs. Schultz.
Joanne Rue? Aye. Brian Nichols?
Aye.
Megan Miller?
Aye.
Amy Levy?
Aye.
Tom Hankins?
Aye.
Carol Fox?
Aye.
Tia Johnson?
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you. We are going into closed session for the consideration of specific personnel concerns, review of independent hearing officers, expulsion orders, and approval of closed session minutes. The Board of Education may reconvene to public session in order to take any action, if necessary, on items discussed in closed session. Thank you.